I didn't even know
Yes,
about
the
the
first
naked
one.
portion. Yeah.
And there's one time we're gonna motion without any clothes. What? None? I'm not the answer, but
There's a lot of power.
And chat goes.
It's not full speed, man.
I'll use it.
Top speed.
I will.
This is great. Oh boy.
You can't build those trees stacked right next to each other.
No, you cannot.
So she's just wasting all this whole
She's
tree.
wasting
Oh my God.
so much
And just cries.
Oh my god. I have one. I remember on stream,
Yeah.
And she's so happy.
End of it here.
yeah. Yep.
Alright.
君は選べないだろう。無駄のために。絶 I don't think I will.
Chat go.
True.
Do I even bother saying it?
I want to control.
Forever.
That's the fun part. Not telling you guys.
Now, we have a problem in the HoloLens community. Snitches. So, these guys chatted. And spilled.
Wow. Okay. Like as if it was the next day or during
Same time.
Oh, same was it at the same time?
This was
I think it was. Actually, I don't know if it was the same thing. I'm not thinking about it. I'm not sure.
because this was Ame was live streaming the New Year's outfit reveals of Gen 4. Because that was Coco, Toa, Luna, Wakame, all of them, they all got their new outfits. And Kanata. They all got their New Year's outfits, so Ame was live streaming her reaction to it. I think this may have been the day after. I know it was very soon after.
Oh. Ghost War, I have a burning question to ask you, okay? According to some received intel, before your debit, you logged into a stream with the other members of the clothes on. Do you have anything to say about the matter?
Huh?
I plead guilty. Where did you get this intel from? Who's your source? Who sent this to you?
Spot in action.
Who's the source? Alright, chat. Spit it up. Come on.
Oh.
Out with it.
No.
Out with it.
No.
I know. Come on. I know you know. I know you know. Come on. I want to see names in the chat. Let's go. Ame, Amelia. Amelia is Amelia. Alright.
Wow, this is so easy. Wow.
Little detectives, that's right. The little detectives are writing out the head honcho detective. I see how it is. I see how it is. What did Amelia say? Looks like I have some vibes to watch then.
I'll be right back as she grabs the rope.
What's it?
I'll be right back.
Ay, ay, ay.
I hope you were going to show him the don't watch this with your eyes closed video.
I have that. I was highly contemplating it.
Say
Just
over.
like-
I'm excited. What is this? Don't watch with your
It's
eyes.
So how exciting!
Should I watch it with my eyes closed?
um,
Do not. Yeah, you know what?
yeah.
No,
sounds a little ridiculous, but researchers have begun to look into it, and they found that it might not be impossible. At first, the idea of life without water sounds so silly because water is straight up amazing. I mean, look at its structure. Water is a simple molecule of just two hydrogen atoms and oxygen. But because of the way that those atoms are arranged, one side of that molecule has a slightly positive charge, and the other is slightly negative. That makes water a polar molecule. And while there are plenty of others like it, water is special because the difference between its charges is relatively large. Among other reasons, that makes H2O really good at dissolving things. Its charges allow water to interact with other substances so strongly that it disrupts the chemical bonds between their molecules or atoms, causing the other substance to dissolve. And water can do that with a huge range of compounds. It's what scientists call a universal solvent. A powerful solvent is essential for life, since biological processes require lots of different molecules all in one place. And solvents allow them to mingle and interact. That isn't the only good thing about water, though. On Earth, its properties may also have allowed life to evolve in the first place. That's because some molecules can be generally attracted to or repelled by water. And certain substances have both water-loving and water-hating parts in the same package. Phospholipids are one of those substances. In an effort to get close to and away from the water at the same time, they'll organize themselves into nice little bubbles called vesicles. That creates tiny pockets of chemistry where reactions can happen without being disturbed. And that may have allowed life to emerge. As a whole, water structure makes it a powerful technique for biochemistry. And that's not to mention all of its other qualities, like the fact that it can keep temperatures on the planet more stable. But just because water is important here doesn't mean it has to be important everywhere. There are other molecules that can fill some of water's roles. Take ammonia, which is one nitrogen atom bonded to three hydrogens. Ammonia is abundant in Jupiter's clouds, and it's also been detected in the plumes emitted from Saturn's moon and Ceres. Like water, it has a charge difference among its atoms, making it polar. That means it can dissolve a lot of substances, including many used in biochemical reactions. But because its structure isn't exactly the same as water, it isn't as good at dissolving the same thing. That means life on Earth couldn't use it as a direct substitute, but scientists think it's possible that a different kind of life could have evolved to take advantage of it. There are even ammonia-loving and ammonia-hating molecules out there, which could give rise to those vesicles for chemical reactions. So ammonia is a promising alternative to water, but it's not perfect. Its weaker charges and interactions make chemical reactions just a bit more tough. Plus, while water is liquid over a range of 100 degrees Celsius, ammonia's liquid range is just 44 degrees at Earth-like pressures. That would give life less wiggle room if the planet's climate fluctuates. It can stay liquid at higher temperatures if there's higher pressure, like on a gas giant. But right now, we just don't understand how life could get started suspended in the clouds as a planet. So, another option researchers are considering is hydrocarbons, like methane and ethane. Broadly speaking, these are strings of carbon and hydrogen, and on Earth, they make up natural gas. But elsewhere in the solar system, where it's much colder, these hydrocarbons exist as liquids. We discovered the most famous example of this in 2004, when the Cassini-Huygens mission revealed that the surface of Saturn's moon Titan is covered with lakes and oceans of liquid hydrocarbons. At first, things like methane might seem like a weird substitute for water because they aren't pure, so they don't have the same power to dissolve things. But it's not like hydrocarbons can't dissolve them. They can dissolve all kinds of oils and fats, so some reactions would be possible. Also, some molecules, like ones used in DNA, might be even more stable in hydrocarbons than water. So maybe it would be even easier for them. Scientists have also suggested that something like vesicles could form in places like Titan, although they would likely use a different molecule since there aren't really phospholipids there. So again, while hydrocarbon-based life might look a bit different, it's not totally out of the question. Ammonia and hydrocarbons aren't the only water alternatives either. Scientists have also been studying everything from liquid nitrogen to sulfuric acid, and each seems to have some potential. So at the end of the day, maybe necessary for life. Before we can say that for sure, though, scientists will need to learn more surprisingly important question because it probably shapes how you think about other star systems, maybe even how you think about their habitability or how they evolved. So, this second question, off the top of your head, you might imagine icy, rocky worlds or scorching gas giants, but what about something a little stranger, like eyeballs? These are planets that, well, look kind of like eyeballs, with one hemisphere totally different than the other. Because of how they orbit, they would have all their ice on one side and all their deserts on the other. They could even have concentric rings with different climates, like the pupil, iris, and point of an eye. And while they sound like something out of science fiction, astronomers think they're probably not all that rare. They could be more common than Earth-like planets, and according to some researchers, they might even be able to support life. Despite their unusual appearance, eyeball planets form thanks to a pretty standard phenomenon. Gravity is what holds a star and a planet together, and it's also mostly what keeps a planet in orbit. But strange things start to happen when a world orbits its star too closely. The closer a planet gets, the stronger the pull of its star's gravity is. And over time, that pull will actually slow down a planet's rotation. Eventually, the world becomes tidally locked, meaning it rotates in exactly the same amount of time it takes to orbit its star. In other words, its day is as long as its year, and the planet always keeps the same face turned toward its star. If you want an example of this, just check out the moon. It's tidally locked to the Earth, which is why you always see the same pattern of craters. The difference is the Earth is the Earth, and not a giant scorching nuclear furnace, which, as it turns out, does make quite a big difference. Around the star, tidal locking means that one of the planet's hemispheres would bake and experience constant day, reaching temperatures up to 100 degrees Celsius or more. Meanwhile, the backside would be in an icy, perpetual night at less than negative 100 degrees. Within the last few years, scientists have suggested that worlds like this may be even more common than thought. But that doesn't mean you need to abandon your dream of finding life on Earth, because eyeball planets could potentially be habitable, at least under some specific conditions. For one, your planet would likely need to orbit a red dwarf star. These stars are smaller and cooler than the sun, so even if your planet was close enough to be tidally locked, it could still be in the habitable zone. That's the area around the star where conditions are just right for liquid water. Admittedly, red dwarfs are also more active than the sun, producing lots of flares. But some researchers think that if a planet had a magnetic field, it would be okay for a while. Besides a red dwarf and a magnetic field, your planet would also need to actually have liquid water, along with an atmosphere. This is partly because we're pretty confident life forms need water and air, and partly because those things would help with the temperature differences. Wind and weather could even out the temperatures on an eyeball planet to something more like we see on Earth, between 50 and negative 50 degrees Celsius. It would still be unpleasantly hot or cold on some parts of the planet, but life could enjoy more temperate conditions in the narrow ring where the two hemispheres meet. Still, even if the eyeball planets are habitable, living there would be almost nothing like what we're used to. In that narrow ring, the sun wouldn't move in the sky, and life would witness a perpetual sunset. This, combined with the dimmer red dwarf star, would mean that any photosynthesizing creatures would get much less light than they would on Earth. Planets would have to take advantage of any light they could get, so they might evolve to be totally black, since black absorbs all colors of visible light. Also, because of the temperature differences, winds would blow constantly around the planet, up to a few thousand kilometers per hour. So organisms would either have to be streamlined to withstand this gale, or could take advantage of it to move around. Finally, there would be no day or night cycle on an eyeball world either. That might not sound like a big deal, but pretty much every life form we know of on Earth has some kind of circadian rhythm driven by the planet's rotation. Maybe the rhythms of life would evolve differently on an eyeball world, but with no examples around here, scientists really don't know how that would work. So maybe there's an eyeball planet out there with a perfectly streamlined black creature that's adapted to a world of twilight. Unfortunately, it will probably be a while before our technology can figure that out. Right now, though, scientists are actively looking into the potential habitability of eyeball planets, because these worlds aren't science fiction or a distant theoretical possibility. Red dwarf stars actually make up around 70% of all the stars in our galaxy, and statistics suggest that all stars So there could be 100 billion or so eyeball planets out there. Scientists have already found probable candidates too. The TRAPPIST-1 system, which is nearly 40 light years away, consists of 7 tidally locked planets around a small red dwarf. Whether they have conditions right for life is still unknown. But with the next generation telescopes coming online, we're certainly getting closer to finding out.
So it looks like it could at least be possible for life to arise well outside the so-called habitable zone and on either extreme, both really far from a star and really close. But one thing is for sure, it needs a star, right? Here's a read again with the answer.
When we look at life on Earth, we see rich, diverse ecosystems powered by our host star, the Sun. So when we think about life elsewhere in the universe, we usually imagine something pretty similar. An Earth-like planet orbiting at an Earth-like distance from a Sun-like star. But we now know that there are billions of planets in our galaxy that look nothing like this. In fact, there are billions of rogue planets that aren't orbiting a star at all. It's thought they formed inside star systems like regular planets, but were then somehow ejected from their original orbit and flung into deep space. The sheer abundance of these planets has led scientists to wonder if life could emerge without a star. And though obviously we don't have conclusive evidence, there's actually good reason to think that it could. It's hard to imagine anything thriving with no star because our sun is so vital to life on Earth. But it turns out that a star's light and heat might not be a deal breaker. For instance, while the life we're most familiar with is powered by sunlight, there are plenty of living things that survive without it. In fact, for at least a little while, no life on Earth used sunlight as an energy source. The molecular tools to perform photosynthesis arose after the first microbes. And that's part of why multiple hypotheses on how life first emerged involve some pretty dark places. Like today, we know of a large number of microorganisms that live deep underground, where they survive off chemical reactions in the surrounding rocks. So one hypothesis is that life first emerged in subterranean pockets of water. Or life could have started around hydrothermal vents, places on the seafloor where volcanic activity produces jets of steam. A variety of organisms live around these vents, so it's not hard to imagine life beginning there before it found its way to the surface. What all these origin stories have in common, though, is liquid water. That's because water is vital to all life on this planet. And if we assume that life, period, needs liquid water, then its existence on a rogue planet is much less likely, as water can only be liquid at a very narrow range of temperatures and pressures. Of course, it's not guaranteed that water is needed for life. As we said in a previous video on this topic, there's an awful lot of chemistry out there. But even if life can live without water, it probably still needs some heat. Deep space is just too cold to envision any interesting biochemistry going on, water or no water. And without host stars to warm them, most rogue planets are probably deep space cold. We're talking just a few degrees above absolute zero. Except there are a surprising number of ways they could be heated up just enough to support life. They might warm themselves from the inside, for instance. That's something we see with a lot of planets, including Earth. In our case, about 10% of the core's heat is left over from the collisions that form Earth, while the rest is from radioactive decay. And it's been suggested that similar processes could produce enough heat inside a rogue planet to warm a subsurface ocean of water for billions of years. Plenty of time for life to emerge and evolve. Even with this kind of core heat, though, a world like this would probably need a surface layer of ice several kilometers thick to act as insulation. Much like, we see on Jupiter's moon, Titan. Or there's another potential way to insulate a rogue planet, a super thick atmosphere. A hydrogen-rich one, 10 to 100 times thicker than ours, would do the trick. And it turns out rogue planets may be better suited to retaining these atmospheres than ones in so-called habitable zones around stars, because stellar radiation can blast that sort of atmosphere away. It's also possible a rogue planet could get a temperature boost from a mechanism called tidal heating. Essentially, gravity warms up two orbiting bodies for the same reason it causes tides. The differences in gravity felt by different parts of the world makes them squash and stretch, generating large amounts of friction. And again, there seems to be a somewhat local example of a subsurface ocean that's heated this way. Saturn's moon Enceladus. So there's no reason to think that this couldn't happen on a rogue planet with its own moon. Now, I know what you're thinking. If these planets are off roaming the galaxy, galaxy, they're probably doing it solo. But it seems like rogue planets can have moons. In fact, simulations suggest that close to 50% of moons could stick by their planets when they go rogue. But before we get too excited about the possibility of life on these wandering worlds, it's worth noting that it's hard to imagine anything more complex than microorganisms on rogue planets. That's because these heating mechanisms give nowhere near as much energy as direct starlight, like what we get from our sun. As far as we know, the sun is what gave life on Earth the ability to evolve the diversity and complexity we see today. Still, it's fun to imagine what strange forms of life could be living in pure darkness in a vast subterranean ocean. Plus, it's definitely possible that there are some ambitious creatures out there eking out a life for themselves on a rogue planet.
A planet without sun rays and sunsets sounds kind of sad, but I guess if you're a microbe, you might not mind, because their lives are pretty sweet. These days, when astronomers look for signs of life, they're often looking for signs of organic molecules, the building blocks of life on Earth. And organic molecules are all based on carbon, but astronomers have at least wondered whether it's possible to have life on a planet without carbon-based molecules. Here's what they think. People talk about the search for alien life all the time, why we haven't found any yet, and what we should be looking for. But somewhere out there in the universe, there might be creatures so different from us that we wouldn't even recognize them as alive. All living things that we know about have some basic things in common. They grow, reproduce, respond to stimuli in their environment, and evolve over time. They also share the same basic biochemistry. They're made out of long chains of carbon molecules that hang out in a water-based medium. But it's also possible that there's life that's not carbon-based, and that life would be a lot different from what we're used to. Carbon's ability to form long chains makes it the perfect base for building molecules complex enough to keep a living thing alive. But even though carbon is great for building these big, complicated molecules, it's not the only element that can do this. Silicon, which is just under carbon on the periodic table, shares many of the same chemical properties. Just like carbon, the outer layer of a silicon atom has 4 unpaired electrons, ready to form molecule-building bonds. Silicon can also form long chains and bond with oxygen, again, just like carbon. But a lot of the bonds formed by silicon are weaker than those formed by carbon, especially the silicon-silicon bonds that it would need to make those long chains. And even with silicon-silicon bonds being formed, they're generally unstable if there's oxygen around. Still, because carbon and silicon have so much in common, some scientists think that the silicon-based life could theoretically be possible, even though we've never found it. Like carbon-based life, silicon-based life would grow, reproduce, respond to stimuli in its environment, and evolve over time. But we might not even recognize it as life at first. A silicon life form might look a lot more like a pile of rocks than a plant or animal, and it would probably do some pretty weird things. When silicon reacts to oxygen, for example, it turns into quartz. So silicon-based organisms that breathe oxygen would exhale quartz. Silicon-based bonds are most stable at high temperatures. So if silicon-based life does exist, the best place to look for it would be in very hot places, like deep beneath the planet's surface. But silicon-based life probably wouldn't be very complex because of its unstable bonds. Still, science fiction writers have had a lot of fun with this idea, like in one episode of the original Star Trek series where Kirk and Spock run into a tunnel-dwelling silicon-based creature that's terrorizing miners on an alien planet. But organisms with such different biochemistry might be hard to even detect. They could look more like rocks or crystals than anything we'd recognize as alive. So some scientists have proposed the idea that there could be a so-called shadow biosphere of non-carbon-based life living alongside us right here on Earth. After all, silicon is the second most common element in the Earth's crust after oxygen. But that silicon is found within rocks, where it would be hard for organisms to incorporate it into their biochemistry. If silicon-based life does exist on Earth, it might be in the form of silicon-based microbes living within magma deep inside the Earth's mantle. But no one has ever found any actual evidence of this. Our best bet for finding silicon-based life is probably to just look somewhere else. The James Webb Telescope, launching in 2018, will look for signs of life in the atmospheres of planets outside of our solar system. Photosynthesis and respiration affect the amounts of oxygen and carbon dioxide in Earth's air. Silicon-based organisms could leave traces of their existence in their own planet's atmospheres as well. Meanwhile, some scientists are working on making their own version of silicon-based life, or at least the first steps toward it. In March, Caltech scientists announced that they found a species of thermophilic bacteria that thrive in extreme heat, with an enzyme that in very rare cases incorporated silicon molecules into its carbon-based molecules, a sort of chemical accident. Using artificial selection, they were able to modify the bacteria in a lab to produce the molecules with silicon in them 2,000 times as often. Someday, artificially created microbes like this may be used to produce complex silicon molecules that chemical companies can turn into glues and sealants. And even cooler, research like this also helps scientists understand more about how life can use silicon. So the next time you're outside and you stop to look at a cool rock, you might want to look for signs of life. Never know.
It's pretty reasonable to assume that Earth is the ultimate Eden in the universe, a paradise planet that's just perfect for life. After all, not only is it our home, but it's also the only place we know life has evolved. But as it turns out, there might be even better places to live, planets even more suitable for life. Scientists call them super habitable planets. They're worlds that can sustain life more than 5 times longer than Earth. And while we haven't found one for sure yet, there might be billions of them lurking in our galaxy alone. The idea of super habitable planets was introduced in 2014 by 2 North American researchers, Renee Heller and John Armstrong. And while each planet could look a little different, they would have 2 main features that would make them better than Earth. First, these planets would be able to maintain liquid water much longer than ours. Earth's cozy, life-sustaining environment is largely thanks to its position relative to the sun, along with other factors like the atmosphere. We exist in what's called the habitable zone, or the area around a star where liquid water can exist on a planet's surface. But that won't last forever. In 5 billion years or so, toward the end of its lifetime, our sun will have expanded into a larger red giant, and it will actually go through some pretty major changes even before that point. Over time, as the sun burns through the fuel in its core, it will gradually become hotter and brighter. That means it will let out more energy, so the habitable zone will migrate outward. For us, that means that it will eventually become so hot that the water on Earth will be vaporized, which isn't exactly great for anything that wants to live here. The sun's habitable zone is currently pushing outwards at about 1 meter a year, and it's predicted that we'll fall off the zone's inner edge in some 1.75 billion years. 2 billion years is a really long time. But it turns out that other planets will stay in their stars' habitable zones for much longer, because they'll orbit stars better than our sun. The sun is a G-class yellow star, or one of the mid-sized, longer-lived stars in the universe. But smaller stars actually live even longer. That's because there's less gravity to power the fusion reactions in the core, so they burn slower, and their fuel lasts longer. That means their habitable zones will migrate outwards more slowly too. So a planet will be able to maintain the right temperatures for liquid water for many more years. The smallest stars are M-class red dwarfs, which live for trillions of years. But they come with their own problems, like explosive solar flares. So instead, scientists think the ideal stars for habitable planets are the intermediate K-class orange stars. They're about 50 to 80% the mass of our sun and can live more than 30 or 40 billion years. But super habitability doesn't just come down to the star. The second trick to being hotter than Earth involves tweaking the planet itself, its atmosphere, geology, and geography. Earth is pretty good, but we still have deserts, ice caps, big chunks of deep ocean without as much complex life. A super habitable planet would do away with these barren landscapes to support more species and more diversity. And one of the ways of doing that is to be more massive than Earth. According to researchers, an Earth-like planet maybe twice as massive as ours would have a bunch of great things for life. For one, it would have more gravity, which would help to hold on to more atmospheric gases. That would give the planet more greenhouse-style warming, so it could orbit a little farther from its star and still stay warm enough to have liquid water. That would buy it even more time before it fell off the inner edge of the habitable zone. Stronger gravity would probably also help heat the center of the planet, which might cause more active plate tectonics. That would likely be a good thing for life. A geologically active planet would keep renewing elements like phosphorus and calcium, which life needs to thrive. All the shifting plates would keep bringing the elements to the surface, stopping them from getting trapped